What is a movie you find terrible but critics seem to love? Girl on the Third Floor. I don't understand how this giant piece of has 81% on Rotten Tomatoes. Sometimes B horror movies seem to only get reviews from die-hard horror fanatics, and this pushes their scores way up. And GT. Sometimes B horror movies seem to only get reviews from die-hard horror fanatics, and this pushes their scores way up. 36 total reviews. Yeah, that sounds on the mark. For comparison, Cats had 302 reviews and Endgame had 505. Not me, but my dad. He absolutely hates Snowpiercer, but it's got fantastic ratings and a great director. Even after rewatching, he still just doesn't get into it. I'll admit the first time I watched it with him I wasn't huge on it either, but I've rewatched it many times and it's one of my favorite films now. Edit. Holy, this blew up. I'm glad I'm not crazy for not knowing what exactly to make of the movie. If you hated the movie on your first watch, I recommend rewatching because it seems lots of people changed their minds after it. AKA Willy Wonka and the Apocalypse Train. My absolute favorite fan theory. ITT. People conflating movies that are popular with movies critics love. For a while there, Avatar and Marvel movies were the top two answers, lol. Who can forget when Avatar topped Sight and Amp Sound's Best of the O-list, or when Richard Brody chose Drive Strange as his favorite film of 2016. Edit. Nobody here is telling you that you shouldn't like Doctor Strange or Avatar. You don't need to justify your love of them to me. That doesn't somehow equate to critics loving them. Avatar has an 83 on Metacritic. Critics did like it a lot. A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. In my opinion, I feel Tom Hanks didn't accurately portray Fred Rogers at all. Rogers was in no way as eccentric as the persona portrayed by Hanks in the film, but was his own breed of human. The Rogers character portrayed by Hanks, especially with the portrayal of violence in a scene of the film set during a live broadcast of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, was in no way the real Mr. Rogers. The documentary Won't You Be My Neighbor was a far better insight into the life of Rogers. I thought it was an okay movie, but I agree that Won't You Be My Neighbor is superior. Part of the problem I had was that Tom Hanks is too recognizable, so it just feels like Tom Hanks dressing up in Fred Rogers clothes. I also felt like the focus on the guy was kind of ham-handed. I was hoping more for a film that made him more personable, while the film seemed to try to push hard on deifying him in a way. Won't You Be My Neighbor did the much better job making him a well-rounded person. Till Mr. Rogers had a first name, and it was Fred. Crash. The one with Holly Hunter and James Spader. That was terrible. The one with Andy Newton and Don Cheadle. That was terrible. And GT. The one with Holly Hunter and James Spader. That was terrible. Car crashes don't make you horny. What's wrong with you? Crash. Like, I challenge you to write a more pandering movie. But impossible character arcs and junior high-level storytelling is apparently Oscar-worthy if you spend enough money on bankable actors. Edit. #reception. I had an assignment back in school to watch Crash. I downloaded the movie and started watching. About 45 minutes in, when James Spader started doing weird things, I realized that wasn't the right movie. Would you like a metaphor or a nature metaphor? Shakespeare in Love. Yes. This. And why did it win an Academy Award over Saving Private Ryan and Life is Beautiful? Weinstein. If you want a more in-depth analysis of Gwyneth's win, you can search for Be Kind Rewind Gwyneth Paltrow. Argo. Not because it was necessarily a badly made movie, but because it willfully rewrote real-world history to make America look like the sole heroes. The British and New Zealand embassies did not turn the American embassy workers away. The British embassy took them in, at great risk mind you, but transferred them to the Canadian embassy since they could more easily pass for Canadians, and the British embassy was in a dangerous location already. The New Zealand embassy took similar risks. The actual Americans who were rescued made extensive comments at the time stating displeasure over how the actual situation was depicted, since it was, well, and don't get me started on U-571. At least that movie was the box office bomb it deserved to be, since it straight up replaced the British Navy, who recovered the Enigma machine with the US Navy. They got so much heat over it that they just lazily shoved a disclaimer at the end saying pretty much actually it was the British Navy who captured the machine, but oh well, to save face. US wasn't even in the war when the events depicted happened. They freely admit that they could only get film financed if it was the US Navy and not the British Navy. American Hustle. One of the most boring movies I have ever watched. And GT, American Hustle, try Kung Hustle instead. The Cantonese subtitles make it. Man scene with the bell cracks me up every time. Ralph Breaks the Internet. A disappointing sequel. This one crushed me because I absolute love Wreck-It Ralph. The sequel was just a hot mess with too many references crammed in to appeal to the kids. Yup, loved the first one. Hate the sequel. It goes against everything that was established in the original and loses that flair that I love so much. Shawshank Redemption. Nah, I'm kidding. That movie is amazing. You had me all riled up for a counterattack before I read your second sentence, lol. There's some sad person out there who's gonna use this as a movie recommendation thread. TBH, I might check out Girl on the Third Floor and Ad Astra just because I've never seen them and quarantine's got me going bonkers. A Star is Born, I just don't get the hype. Almost no conflict in her rise to stardom and the ending seemed so predictable the closer I came to it that I had a hard time even finishing it. It was just boring. It seems like one of those movies that anyone who's in Hollywood or has experience with any kind of stardom would enjoy romantically, but as a layman the rest of us just aren't as invested. Hollywood loves movies about Hollywood like Broadway loves songs about New York. Was horrible, but somehow Halle Berry got Bubs out. Thornton got his sack out. Greatest Showman, like it's about a awful person but they make him seem like a good guy, plus the script and songs and everything about it was just mediocre, so when I watched it after all the praise it got I was just disappointed. The soundtrack kinda slaps, but I absolutely hate how it glorified Barnum, who is a terrible human being. Agreed. The movie was a mediocre movie about a piece of human, but the soundtrack was pretty good. I've only watched it once and that was 8 months or so ago and I still get some of the songs stuck in my head. Shape of Water. Honestly might have been a good movie to address the way humans treat creatures, but they fucked it up by having them fall in love. Like what the actual. Ah yes, Nemo. Great movie. Finding Nemo. I genuinely think that the movie Gravity with Sandra Bullock and George Clooney is one of the worst movies that has ever hit the big screen. Would have been great had they consulted literally anyone with basic knowledge of physics when making that movie. Happy Feet. What in the actual F? It was cute when the lead penguin was little, but then he outgrew the cute. I think that was supposed to be idea. At least that's what I got from it. Everyone more or less made fun of him because he was different.